Good afternoon. Today I'm joined by our Mayor, Brandon Scott, Executive Director of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, Shantae Jackson, Baltimore Police Commissioner Michael Harrison, my Deputy Tom Donnelly, and one of my state's attorneys, Laura Rupersberger, other members of my office, and other individuals that work this case. This case demonstrates that the Office of State's Attorney is once again an active participant in the Baltimore Group Violence Reduction Strategy. On March 29th, 2023, the Baltimore City Grand Jury indicted the following individuals for their participation in alleged fentanyl drug trafficking organization that was operating out of the 300 block of South Franklin Town Road. One, Dana Kennedy, also known as Dana Kennedy. This individual has been indicted on 3 counts of conspiracy, 1 count of conspiracy to distribute fentanyl, volume dealer of fentanyl, and possession of intent to distribute fentanyl. Each one of those counts carries 20 years. Michelle Taylor, she's been indicted on 3 counts as well: conspiracy to distribute fentanyl, distribution of fentanyl, possession of intent to distribute fentanyl. Each one of those counts carries 20 years. Jaden Wingate faces a maximum penalty as well, having been indicted on 2 counts of conspiracy to distribute fentanyl and 4 counts to distribute fentanyl as well. Each one of those carries 20 years. Kenneth Davis, also known as Kenny Waddy, faces as well 2 counts of conspiracy to distribute fentanyl and distribution of fentanyl. Once again, every one of those counts carries 20 years. And Deshaun Parker, who's indicted on conspiracy to distribute fentanyl, 2 counts of firearm drug trafficking, 2 counts of wear, carry, and transport an illegal handgun about their person, and possession of intent to distribute cocaine as well. That young man is facing 20 years, 5 years, one of which carries 5 years without the possibility of parole. A substantial amount of time this entire drug organization is carrying. I must remind everyone that individuals charged by indictment are presumed innocent unless and until they're proven guilty. I want to take a moment to applaud the amazing work of our prosecutors, our Baltimore City Police Department detectives, and our partners in Monzi, the mayor's office. One of the things that's very important in fighting crime in our city, we have to go after some of the violent drug organizations. Dismantling a drug trafficking organization requires skillful coordination between law enforcement and prosecutors, as well as persistence and dedication over several months. It's important to note that when we came into office, my administration, we hadn't had a takedown of a drug organization where we worked collaboratively in a while. The prosecutors from our office were some of my first hires. They immediately reached out to the Monsi. They immediately reached out to Baltimore City Police Department. And within our first 100 days, they made the arrest to take down this drug organization. The hard work displayed by Baltimore City Police Department, my narcotics team in this case, has resulted in removal of deadly weapons off the streets of Baltimore, as well as fentanyl. This work and success we do does not occur without the government and law enforcement partnerships working together toward a common goal. One of the things that's also important, we recovered almost a half kilo of fentanyl. That can kill thousands of people in our city. With the number of drug overdose that we see each and every single year in our city, this is a major win for everybody up here. With that stated, I'd now like to turn this over to our Mayor, Brandon Scott.
Thank you, Mr. State's Attorney. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. I am here today in support of this arrest and indictment of these members of this alleged fentanyl drug trafficking organization operating in Southwest Baltimore. And I want to start where the State's Attorney ended. We must all be reminded that overdose is the #1 killer of folks in our city, and this level of fentanyl that we saw could have killed, as you heard, thousands of people. I want to thank our State's Attorney and his entire team for their deep partnership and collaboration, our Police Commissioner, Michael Harrison, our Monsi Director, Director Jackson, all of our partners for collaborating in dismantling illegal operations and taking individuals who actively pose a threat to our communities off the street. These just aren't petty drug dealers. This group has been connected to the proliferation of deadly opioids in Shipley Hill and the surrounding communities, in addition to being associated with known violent activity. treating the safety of our neighborhoods as a public health issue means going after those who are peddling death and destruction. I want to be very clear that distributing fentanyl and other dangerous substances is a form of violence. In fact, just as I said earlier, Baltimoreans are almost 3 times more likely to die from an overdose than even from gun violence. And we will continue to go after those who make the decision to spread this harm into our communities, and we will do that together in deep partnership and collaboration. Our commitment to making Baltimore safer requires that partnership and an extensive strategy. And we've talked to you all about the group violence reduction strategy, and now as the expansion into the Southwest at the beginning of the year, and how we're going to continue to deepen that partnership and see more bountiful results. These are the type of outcomes we are yielding through collaboration and leveraging our shared public safety resources. This would have not been possible if our residents also didn't step in and say enough is enough. So we always thank the residents of Baltimore for being our most important partner. We stand here today unified and fully committed to the well-being of our residents, and this may be the first drug trafficking organization takedown during our state's attorney's tenure, but I can guarantee you that it won't be the last. Again, thank you all. Thank you to the state's attorney's office, to BPD, to Monsi, for all of your work and the vital role that you play in working together to make Baltimore the safest version of itself. Thank you very much.
Now I would turn it over to Ms. Shantae Jackson, Director of Monsi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. State's Attorney. Good morning, everyone. I stand here on behalf of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, the agency that's responsible for the management and the coordination of the group violence reduction strategy. I want to remind everyone that our work through this strategy and through our violence reduction efforts in Baltimore is deeply rooted in keeping our residents safe, alive, and free. The last thing that we would ever want to have no choice but to do is to send folks to prison. These 5 individuals, however, are not only implicated in group violence, but also have made decisions that have inflicted trauma and harm on our neighbors in Shipley Hill, in Southwest Baltimore. The consequence of this is the direct result of their decision to engage in activities that perpetrate harm and the community's decision to reject violence as a norm. Violence takes on so many forms. We know that oftentimes when we see this level of drug trafficking in a neighborhood, it's connected to physical violence. On top of the harm that these individuals have caused through the proliferation of fentanyl in Shipley Hill, they are also known to folks in our community as extreme drivers of violence. Ultimately, our responsibility is to eradicate harm and to heal our community from the trauma inflicted upon them by this group's activities. Following this takedown, Monsi immediately activated a coordinated neighborhood stabilization response in the surrounding area. We've identified a community partner to work alongside us over the course of the next month and a half to bring services to community members to address their trauma. I want to be clear when I say that GVRS's strategy and its success relies on a balance of positive and punitive consequences. While it's important that we ensure that there are swift and legitimate consequences for those who make the decision to perpetrate harm, it's equally important that we offer supports to those who change their mind and change their lives for the better. We also want to be genuine when we're offering services. So in this instance, the individuals indicted received what we call a law enforcement only notification since they were under active investigation. Today's announcement is a sign of the progress that we've made to bring GVRS to the Southwestern District through both positive and punitive consequences. As of yesterday, we've seen a 30% aggregate decrease in homicides and non-fatal shootings year over year since the activation of the Southwestern District in January. Keeping in mind that this district, after redistricting goes into effect, is projected to account for 16% of the citywide gun violence distribution total, making up the largest percentage across all of the districts. This progress This decrease in homicides and non-fatal shootings is a result of takedowns like the one that we're talking about today and services that are offered by our partners, YAP and ROCA. In fact, as of today, we've completed direct notification referrals for 37 individuals in the Southwestern District. I'll close with these points. This is about three things: choice, decision, consequence. We want those who are engaged by the group violence reduction strategy to understand the choice that they are being presented with. And like Kiko, who we heard from just last month, make the decision to turn their lives around and accept the services that are offered through our partners, YAP and ROCA. But if they don't, Baltimore, know that this is the team that is going to be holding them accountable. With that said, I'll turn it over to the police commissioner. Sir?
Thank you, Director Jackson. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. State's Attorney. And good morning. And thank you all for joining us here today. This investigation began in January of 2023 as a law enforcement collaboration between the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office Narcotics Unit and the Baltimore Police Department's Group Violence Unit. I want to personally thank Sergeant Brian Flynn and Detective Joshua Moody of the Group Violence Unit who are here with us today. With the hard work and cooperation of our agencies, we were once again able to bring down a drug trafficking organization doing extensive damage to our city's neighborhoods and streets. As we are exhibiting here today, those who continue to perpetrate a culture of violence in our city will be held to account and brought to justice. We will continue to work together to dismantle organizations that add to our nation's overdose epidemic and destroy our neighborhoods through drug trafficking and gun violence. This is just the latest in a series of robust operations in which we are able to make multiple arrests and put down known drug trafficking organizations and then put them out of business, thus illustrating our commitment to the mayor's group violence reduction strategy and disrupting this type of criminal behavior. As State's Attorney Bates stated, this partnership resulted in the arrest and indictments of 5 members of an alleged fentanyl drug trafficking organization in the Shipley Hill neighborhood. Of these 5, 4 of them have previous arrest records that include assault, drug distribution, and even attempted murder. These continued agency collaborations and law enforcement partnerships are crucial in bringing about a safer, healthier community for our residents and visitors alike. And before we close, I want to thank the men and women of the Baltimore Police Department, especially the members of the Group Violence Unit and members who are here with us today for their dedication in this investigation and for their ongoing work in making this city safer. To the people of Baltimore, we heard you. This is us delivering on a promise to go after those who are causing harm in our community. For the drug dealers in Baltimore, you very well could be next. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Once again, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation, from the mayor, from Monzi, the police department, also my prosecutors. I want to also give notice to those out there who are perpetrating a crime on the citizens and the victims in our city. We're saying enough is enough. You don't know where we are, but we're listening and we're looking. And eventually we will come and we will indict you. And then we'll sit down and decide we're going to try you on the state side or the federal side. We've also heard what the citizens have said, and that's about holding people accountable. At this moment in time, I'll open up for any questions.
Start the farm, let's go ahead. Leslie.
Mostly for the commissioner, looking at the bigger picture, just how big of a problem does Baltimore have with these drug trafficking organizations and neighborhood gangs? How big of a problem is this, and what do you need to eradicate them from the city?
Well, we get complaints about drug trafficking organizations all the time, not just the police department, but all of us standing here. And even in our community meetings, people are telling us about open-air drug markets. And we make a point of going after those drug organizations and even individuals who are out there, number one, selling drugs and creating harm by selling poison to people who would overdose. And number two, it's when it's connected to violence or they are themselves committing violence, we are going after them. This is an example and a delivery of a promise that we would go after those who are committing harm. And so it is a concern for all of us. That's why you see us up here doing this work, that we're delivering on a promise to actually go after those who commit harm. What we need is, number one, we need, as you heard, we need consequences to make sure we can deter people from making bad criminal decisions. But we also need to help people change their life conditions so that they don't have to do it in the very first place. Both of those are happening right now. They didn't happen in the past, but they're happening right now, and that's what we attribute some of the success to.
But are neighborhood gangs a problem in Baltimore?
Well, neighborhood gangs they're not the gangs in the traditional sense. They're loosely organized, and they don't have a hierarchy structure as in traditional gangs that you might see portrayed on TV. But they are an issue because some of them are tied to violence, and they are tied to drug trafficking, which is also tied to violence. And so it's all connected, and we want to make sure that we can hold people accountable with consequences, but we want to change their lives so they don't have to participate in that lifestyle. And so both of those things have to be done every day and all the time, at the same time.
Kate?
Yeah, forgive me if you already said this, but I'm hoping you could fill in a little of the timeline. Commissioner, you said the investigation began January of this year. Did the arrests happen today? When did you move in? And what's the status of the one who remains at large? Are you actively searching for him?
The investigation began in January of this year. It was about a 3-month investigation. The investigation culminated in indictments on March the 29th of this year. During the course of the investigation, the detectives used National Guard helicopters, undercover controlled purchases, things of that nature. The indictments, like I said, were March 29th, and the takedown or the organized execution of search warrants as a result of the investigation took place on April 4th of this year. During the takedown day on April 4th, that's when the substantial amount of fentanyl was recovered from Mr. Kennedy's home and Mr. Kennedy's vehicle. Superseding indictments were filed with respect to Dane Kennedy and Michelle Taylor, and that was, I believe, the second week of April. And with respect to Kenneth Waddy, who is at large, there are ongoing efforts to locate him and to arrest him pursuant to the TBA warrant that's been issued for him.
If I may, a follow-up question. You don't often hear, several of you said, the community said enough is enough, and you don't hear that a lot. Is this an instance where the community stepped up and actually provided information? Usually we hear you asking, please come forward, we need the community's help. Like so many of you said it, I thought it was worth it.
Well, I will say that we hear complaints from all communities across the city, and this is one of the communities that we were made aware of this drug trafficking organization. We, as a team, with all of our state, federal partners, prioritize investigations and where we need to focus next. This group, there was evidence to support that they not only were in drug trafficking of fentanyl, which is extremely dangerous, but also tied to violence. And so as we prioritized, this group became the focus of this team, and now we're delivering on that promise.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I just have a few questions. The first one's for Director Jackson. Can you talk about what the neighborhood stabilization response looked like after you guys went in following the takedown?
I would offer that it is currently underway. So as soon as we become aware of a takedown happening, we're partnering with the Baltimore Police Department, other city agencies, to gather 211, 311, and 911 data to determine what the immediate needs would be in the community while simultaneously working to make sure that there aren't any power vacuums that erupt as a result of a major DTO being taken off the street. And so as a part of the initial assessment, a walkthrough of the community with partner resources to do an on-the-ground assessment that will be coupled with that data assessment, and we'll be walking into communities with multiple city agencies over the coming weeks.
Okay. And then you said that they got a law enforcement warning. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. A law enforcement only notification means that our community moral voice partners and our social service providers, YAP and ROCA, are not a part of that notification. When we see a full notification, we have law enforcement, our community moral voice, and our service partners participating in that because there's an offer of services. There is not an active investigation going on. And as we've indicated before, it would be disingenuous of this administration, of our partners, to offer someone the opportunity to walk away while they're currently being investigated and about to deal with some punitive consequences. And so in this case, a law enforcement only notification was made. That means that law enforcement communicated to them that they needed to stop doing what they were doing with no offer of services.
Can I just?
I have just one last
had a
question for Commissioner Harrison, but you can go after. To follow up on, you said that there were, these are connected to some violent incidents. Are you able to say like which incidents, if any, that you're able to release right now?
I am not. We know that they were tied to drug trafficking. One person has a history with attempted murder. So we know that they are, number one, putting poison into neighborhoods, but we also had information that they were somehow tied to the violence that erupted, whether it was them or others on their behalf, violence occurring in that neighborhood and in other neighborhoods as well. That's what gave us the look into that organization to prioritize it and say, this is the next organization we're going to take down.
While it's still fresh, I just wanted to your first question was a great one, but you threw out so many acronyms, I have no idea what you were talking about. Can you just in layman's terms explain what people in that neighborhood might see? Who might be walking down the street? What agencies? Maybe a lot of times people will ask us, they said they're gonna be here. Like, what should they be looking for in regular person?
I often forget that I'm a geek girl and that acronyms are my life. So when we say CNSR, that is a coordinated neighborhood stabilization response that not only partners the agencies that you see behind us, but partners like the health department, partners like the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, DOT, DPW. I'm saying a whole bunch more acronyms, but I think folks know what these agency acronyms stand for. To go on the ground in real time to have conversations with folks about resources that are needed in the community. And we do that in addition to taking a look at 211, which is social service requests, 311, city service requests, and 911, emergency service requests over a 3-month period leading up to that takedown so that we really know what community members are dealing with. So that when we go in and partner with a community project manager, someone who lives there or works there and works very closely with residents, that we are being intentional about the services and the supports that we're providing in an effort to stabilize what could become a powder keg, quite frankly, had we not activated those responses.
That explains it. Thanks.
Question for the mayor.
I'll say,
Oh, sorry.
we got
I
one
just
more.
want to understand this group's connection to like group violence if they're not being charged with any like specific shootings. I guess, is that the way that you became aware of them, or are you expecting to like continue investigating and somehow charge them in connection with group violence?
Thank you for the question. As we mentioned before, the folks that have been indicted today are known by community members to be violent drivers. We have heard about the past history of at least 4 of those individuals. And so as the group violence reduction strategy determines where investigations are going to start and end, it is driven by where we see group violence occurring. I won't speak for the commissioner, but I would say that we're going to make sure that we work to unearth anything and everything that resulted in violence in that community and its connection to this group and or any other groups. I'll turn it over to the commissioner and to the state's attorney to share any additional points.
So thank you, Director. I think there are 2 concepts. There is group member involvement. There's group or gang area involvement. And we have to look at both the members of an organization and the geographical area. And while sometimes we target an organization, they may be tied to violence, but the area may have the violence that triggered us going after them because they operate within that area.
And also remember that a half kilo of fentanyl, what you find oftentimes, fentanyl is killing many, many people. So when you look at the violence, sometimes just the drug itself is a very violent drug, looking at the fentanyl. But then you also have to remember, one of the individuals allegedly had a handgun on their person. And we know the destruction that illegal handguns are doing in the community. And so for us, working together collaboratively to take a half kilo of fentanyl off the streets and have these individuals here now charged, that's something no one was seen coming out of this office or coming out of this group. And so what we're saying is that we're here, we're back, and those individuals perpetrating violence and selling drugs, they need to be on notice because we're coming.
All right, last one, Alexa.
A bill is going to be introduced this evening. It's going to call for more transparency surrounding the grant-making process. Do you believe this bill is necessary? Do you support it?
Well, first I've heard of the bill, so we'll have to get back to you on that. I thought we were going to be talking about violence today, but I think that I'm always someone that talks about transparency, but when you think about our grants, right, and the grants that the city gets, I don't think that anybody's gonna argue that, especially when we get them from the federal and the state government that has a lot of requirements and that information is out there for the public to see. We're always going to be pushing that out there. We'll see and talk with the council member about the piece of legislation as it goes through the process, but I can't comment yay or nay about a bill that hasn't even been introduced to the council as of yet. But what I will comment about is what we've been talking about today, that this is a collaboration, and this is how, as we're talking right now, we have a 21% reduction year to date in homicides in the city of Baltimore, which should be what we're talking about public, and how these folks who we know are dealing in death and destruction, just like the last takedown that we had. This is a notice for folks that if you do not change the way that you operate your life, this is going to be you. And we're being very clear about that. Whether you're dealing drugs in an organized way, loosely, however, we do not care. The reality is what we care about is the actions of dealing that drugs that is causing people to die in our city as our leading cause of death. The actions that people are doing when they're carrying those weapons and violence, that we're going to continue to go after them and remove them off the streets of Baltimore. What you're seeing and hearing from us is about how a team is united in fighting Baltimore's longest pressing public health issue, which is gun violence. Thank you.
Commissioner, we had a rather brazen daytime armed robbery in Canton over the weekend. What can you tell us about that? We're looking for 2 people.
Well, it's under investigation. We are looking for 2 people. There's more to come that you will be getting a little bit later about who we think these individuals are, asking the community for help. That will come later. But it is a brazen robbery that happened in daytime, and we're working with the company. We're working with victims. We're looking for evidence. So anyone with any information is asked to call us right away. And you can even do it anonymously by calling Crime Stoppers at 1-866-7-LOCK-UP. It is currently under investigations, and detectives are following leads at this very moment.
Thank you.
I had one on-topic question.
It's on topic.
Yes, it is
All right,
on topic. Where do you believe the fentanyl came from? It's always interesting to hear answers to that. In terms of we're 95, so I know it's probably early, but.
Well, it can come from a myriad of places. I don't really think it's fair for me to speculate. I think we know the traditional routes, whether someone's purchased it and brought it into the city. I can tell you this, it's highly unlikely that they made it here in the city. They're bringing it in, and that's why it's not just the people you see here. It's making sure we partner with the federal authorities, making sure we partner with the port authorities, making sure we partner with everybody that has, in terms of having some role in reference to the roads that lead to Baltimore City. Everybody has to work together. And one thing, once again, I want to hit and talk about again, we're working together. That should be bad news to the people that want to continue to commit crime, because we're no longer in our own silos. We're saying we're together. And that is what I really want to say is our focus in making sure we take down just the beginning, and we got a lot more to go. Thank you.